and welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed, and today I'm going to show you a super quick, easy table runner to make. These are so quick and easy that you will make a ton of these. You'll be giving them away as gifts. You'll be decorating your house. In every room, I guarantee you'll end up having one of these table runners. Alrighty, so you're going to need a few things today. So you can see here it's quite a lengthy table runner, and you can make these to any size, but I'm going to make it even simpler today by just using the width of the fabric and a couple of seams, and we'll be done. Now this particular one here, I don't have any interfacing in this one. It's just a thin one that I put on my coffee table in the lounge room, and of course cups and everything are getting sat on that, and so I don't want any bulk or anything in there. So this one today that I'm going to show you is how to make it without the interfacing, and in a week or so another one will go up with showing you how to use interfacing and do some basic quilting on it. So let's get started for the super simple one. First of all, you're going to need two different sorts of fabric, and as you can see here I have a featured fabric which is upside down. I just realized. So basically what you're going to need, you need to cut a 12-inch strip, a width of the fabric of your feature fabric, and this is my feature fabric here. Then you're also going to need an 18-inch strip width of the fabric of your accent fabric. So this is this fabric here. Okay, so the accent fabric is on the border and also on the back of the table runner. All right, so once you have got all of those cuts done, so just the width of the fabric, so if you've got bolted fabric at home, just lay the bolt out and cut a 12-inch strip of your featured fabric and an 18-inch strip of your accent fabric. Okay, if you've purchased fabric from a quilt store or anything like that, don't trust that it, even though it might look straight, don't trust that it is straight. You want to square that up onto your so put it on your cutting mat, and you want to get that nice and square and a nice straight line. Alrighty, so I'm going to pop this out of the way and I'll show you what I have got and what else you're going to need. You're also going to need some pins or wonder clips. You're going to need some matching thread, and most importantly you are going to need a 1/4-inch foot. Now if you're not using a 1/4-inch foot, that's okay. You're just going to have less of a border where your accent fabric is. So whatever size foot you use, make sure that you're consistent with your seams. So to make it super easy, I just use my 1/4-inch foot. All right, so once you've got those in place, you're also going to need a quilting ruler and also a rotary cutter, and of course you're going to need your fabric. Now I've already cut mine and squared them all up and made sure that I've got some straight lines happening and all the rest of it. I'm going to give these have been folded for a couple of days, so I'm going to give them a really good press again, and then we're going to get sewing. So just to repeat those measurements again, your featured fabric, which is my blue fabric here with these cute little parrots on them, and isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so you're going to need that to be the width of the fabric and at 12 inches, and your accent fabric you're going to need at 18 inches the width of the fabric. So you can see here that it's just one big strip. All right, I'm going to head over to the ironing board and I'm going to iron all of those and get the creases all out of them, and then we're going to get to sewing. Okay, so once you've pressed all those, what you're going to do is you're going to take your strips. So you can see here they're quite long. They're about 42 to 44 inches depending on your fabric that you choose. Some are a little bit longer and some are a little bit shorter. And you're going to lay them out on your cutting board or your sewing table, wherever you're stitching. Okay, and I'm just going to work with this top edge here, and then basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line my feature fabric up with the long edge of my accent fabric. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my fabrics are lining up down this end, so the selvages are down this end. I haven't cut them off yet. I will do that a little bit later. All right, so once you are comfortable where you've got everything lining up, so you've got your ends lining up, and you might find that one of your fabrics is longer than the other, that's okay, because we're going to trim it up. That's why I haven't cut the selvages off. All right, so you grab your pins or your wonder clips, whatever you're comfortable in using, and just start pinning along that long edge, making sure that your raw edges are all aligning. You want them to be even. And then you just go all the way down the long edge, popping some pins in along the way. All right, so you can see here that we're lining that up and all our edges are nice and straight. And then all you're going to do is you're going to head over to the sewing machine and you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're going to reverse at the beginning and at the end, and you're going to go all the way down. Now you don't have to have any special stitch length or anything like that, so just whatever your machine is set at when you turn it on, that's what you're going to stitch at, just at the default setting. And you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way along to the end, and you're going to reverse at the beginning at the end. Okay, so we've done that. You can see there that I've just stitched all the way along just using the default setting, okay, which is usually about a 2.5 2.0 depending on the machine that you use. Okay, so we've sewn that, and you can see there that that's all stitched into place. We've gone down that entire long edge. Now what we need to do is press that seam, and we're going to press it to our accent fabric. Okay, so I'm going to head off to the ironing board and give that a really good press. Just press it straight over as if you were doing a patchwork block. Okay, so we've pressed that seam to the accent fabric, so you can see there's my feature fabric, and my seam is going to that backing fabric or accent fabric, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to attach this side of our feature fabric to that side of the accent fabric. So you can see here that they're two different sizes. So basically to do that, all we're going to do is we're going to lay it nice and flat, and then we are just going to grab our feature fabric and we're just going to lift it and bring it up to the raw edge of the accent fabric. Again, making sure everything is lying nice and flat, so smooth it out as you go, and all that your long edge is aligning up. As I said, don't stress too much about this end down here because we are going to trim that up. All right, so now what we need to do is align our raw edges and pop in some pins so it doesn't move on us. And it's a great way to display your really favorite nice piece of fabric that you've got in your stash, and you're not too sure what you want to do, but you don't want to cut it up into a patchwork quilt or anything like that. This is a great way to use that fabric to display it and get a lot of enjoyment out of it because you're not cutting it up. And that's what I really like about this table runner. Okay, so you might need to put a few extra pins in this side just so everything's lining up and it doesn't move on you. All right, now we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to do exactly what we just did before. Now, yes, it is looking a little bit weird and all the rest of it, but it'll all make sense after this seam. All right, so head to the sewing machine, use a 1/4 inch seam allowance starting at this end. Make sure that you do a back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then we'll square it up. Okay, so we've stitched all that down. Now you're going to remove your pins, and again you're going to press that seam that we just sewed to the accent fabric. Okay, so that is all now pressed. Now what you're going to do is you've just got this nice big tube and you're just going to turn it out the right way. All right, so the next step is to get this to lay nice and flat. And as you can see, it naturally wants to just sit so it's got some borders, but we need to make sure that these borders are even all the way down. So what I like to do is I just sort of play around with it, get everything laying nice and flat, and just roll that fabric until it looks like that it's somewhat even. Now, it's really good to work on a long table for this. It just makes it so much easier if you don't have to have it bunched up or anything like that. Now, there's a couple of different things that you can do to get this the borders to match so they're even on each side, as you can see on the one that I've finished. So I'll just show you that there. So you can see there that it's got a nice even border all the way along. So to do that, what you need to do is have a ruler. So you can either use your quilting ruler or you can use a seam guide. Now, there's many different seam guides on the market. This is one that I use. It's just a slide one like this. And so basically this bit here is going to, I'm going to work on the top one. It's just going to sit like this, as you can see here. And I'm just going to slide that along, making sure that this green one is staying even with this seam here, and then I can adjust and pop a couple of pins in so it stays in place. All right, so we want to set this at 1.5, and I just double check that on my cutting mat. So I don't know if you can see that. So there's my 1 inch mark there, and I just line my green up on that, and then the yellow one is sitting onto the half, so it's 1.5. All right, so we're right to go. And you can use a ruler for this as well. I just use this seam guide because it's in my, it's just easy to use for me. And to use a ruler, all you're going to do is you grab the 1.5 inch mark here and you line that up on the seam, and then you can adjust your fabric accordingly. Now it may be a little bit less, it may be a little bit more, depending on what you've used as a seam allowance, but generally it's about 1.5, and I just pop a pin in there, and that's going to hold it in place for me. And I just slide it there all the way down. And as I said, it may need to be adjusted. It may be a little bit less than 1.5. And you want to make sure that your fabric is nice and smooth as well. So that will make a big difference. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to spin that around, and then I'm going to make my adjustments. So again, making sure that everything is smooth. Okay, so now that's all pinned in place, what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the ironing board, and we're going to give that a really good press, and then we're going to trim up our ends. Okay, so we've pressed that all into place, and now what we're going to do, you can see here that we've got our selvages and our fabric's not very even, so that happens because sometimes the fabrics are a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. So what you're going to do is we're going to line up our straight edge down the bottom here, okay, with a line on our mat, okay, and then we've got another solid line here, and I can see that I need to have it come this way just a touch so I can get rid of all of that selvage. So just making sure that it is lining up on a line on your mat, and then you've got this line here to use. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up on that line, and then I'm just going to trim off that excess. And we can discard that. Now at this point in time, I just like to pop a couple of little pins in here so it doesn't move on me when I'm doing the other end. And then all I'm going to do is spin that around without making too much movement of that fabric that we just cut. Okay, so again, we're going to line up our straight edge on a line on our mat. And you can see here we've got quite a lot to get rid of. This is quite a little bit larger, about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch larger. So I'm going to make sure that I have got rid of all of my selvage on both of my fabrics, and to do that I just put my finger underneath and I feel for the selvage, and I know that this dotted line here is the line that I'm going to follow, and this is straight up here and it's straight down here, so I know that that is ready to go. All right, again, I just pop a couple of pins in there just to make it a little bit secure for me, so I know when I'm moving it around that my fabric or my border isn't shifting or anything like that. Okay, so now we have 2 even ends, so you can see there and that one as well. And I can now move these around without any sort of concern whatsoever that the fabric is going to shift, because I've got pins in holding the border into place, and I've got pins holding the end into place. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next step. All right, so the next step is we are going to fold our little tube here in half, and we're going to have our featured fabric on the outside. So basically this is why I've got the pins in there, just to hold everything in place so it doesn't shift on me or anything like that. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half lengthways, and you're going to line up these edges here. So I always make sure that these seams here are matching, and then I grab a pin and pop that in there. So you can, I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but those seams are actually nesting really well. And then I'm just going to get my fork pin, and I love these pins because I know that either side is not going to move once they're in, and I'll put a link down below where you can get those, and also for the seam guide as well. Okay, so I'll pop that in there, and then the pins that I've previously put in there, I can just move them and pin this together. And you're going to repeat that for the other end as well. Once you've got it all pinned in place, what you're going to do is you're going to head to the sewing machine. You're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting at the fold and doing a back stitch. You're going to stitch all the way down and end with a back stitch. And you're going to repeat that for the opposite end as well. Okay, so we've done that. We can remove our pins from that end there. And from this end as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we can remove our pins that was holding our border. We can get rid of those now, because that's not going to move anywhere. And as I said, they are just a precautionary measure just to stop the border from shifting any. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to head over to the ironing board, and you're actually, just to reduce some of this bulk, you are actually going to press these seams open. So just butterfly them, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so once you've butterflied those, just like that, you can see there. Now, if you find that you've got a little bit of bulk up here, by all means, before you press that out, just give it a little bit of snip. You can see there that I've just snipped it to show you. It's not necessary, but some people might have a little bit of a thicker seam allowance, so it might be a little bit of bulk. If that's the case, just take a little bit of a snip and it will butterfly nicely for you. Okay, so the next step is to basically make our triangular ends, which you can see on one I've already done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this over and stitch that all into place. All right, and all you do for that is basically put your fingers in, pushing that featured fabric up into the hat, for the lack of a better term, and then you're going to just lay that flat like that, and then this end you're just going to grab that and you're going to conceal that seam. All right, get your finger in there or your poking device and get that point to sit out really nicely, and then what you're going to do is you're going to smooth it all out and make sure that it is all poking out correctly and that it's sitting nice and flat. I'm just grabbing my poking device, get that tip right out, get it to sit nice and flat. Okay, so the next step is just, as I said, to get that to sit nice and flat. Make sure everything is nice and smooth. And at this point, you might want to head over to the ironing board. It's not necessary, but I always like to give it a really good press and make sure that everything is sitting where it needs to be. Okay, so we've pressed all that into place. You can see here that I've got a couple of pins in there. I'm just holding it all in place so it doesn't move on me, because we've got to head to the sewing machine now and we're going to top stitch it down. So the first place that we're going to top stitch is actually in this stitch here. Okay, and we're going to do the same at the other side. Now, the reason I don't actually sew these ends down first is because if there's any little bit of movement, I can hide that underneath here. So we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and as I said, we're just going to stitch in ditch. Because we're not going through any real bulk, it's just 2 layers of fabric. You don't need to worry about lengthening your stitch length, and you are just going to stitch from one end to the other. Now, I like to start a little bit under here, just to hide any back stitching that I'm doing, and then that's concealed later on. Just gives it a neater finish. Okay, so I've stitched in the ditch, and now what you're going to do is give that a really good press, and then we're going to top stitch across the top here, just using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, as you can see on this one here. Bring that up a bit closer. So just an 1/8 of an inch all the way across, and what that does is stops this from lifting up, and your in-ditch stitching is then concealed underneath here. So give that a really good press, head over to the sewing machine and top stitch that down. Okay, so that's all done, and now the last thing that you need to do is just top stitch all the way around. So give that another really good press before top stitching, and then you are finished. Okay, so we've stitched all that in place, we've top stitched all the way around, and basically that is it. Your runner is done. But if you've had some issues like I have here, like, it's not really much to worry about. Overall, something's probably going to be sitting on top of it anyway. You don't really have to stress about it, but if you're really concerned about it, you can just grab a couple of buttons and add them on there as just little accent buttons. So I've got these little blue buttons here that I'm going to add on. I've also got some darker ones actually. as well, so you can see here. With the first one that I showed you earlier, I didn't have that issue, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. And over the next couple of weeks, I will show you some different things that you can do to these just to dress them up a little bit. But I'm not going to bore you today with showing you how to sew a button on, but basically all you're going to do is you're just going to hand sew that on, and I'm thinking that the darker ones are going to look a bit better. As you can see there, I'll come in a little bit closer for you so you can see. Yeah, so I think I'm going to put the darker one on there. I think that looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to give that a really good press, and basically that is it. It's ready to go. Super quick, 4 seams, and you're done. Okay, so that is your table runner. It is done, and basically it's ready to use. You can go and put it on your coffee table or your dining table, whatever you want to do. As I said, you can add the buttons on here if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But it is a great way to show a beautiful feature fabric, especially those fabrics that we love to hoard and we don't like to cut up. This is a great way to enjoy them, and it's super quick and easy to do. So if you like this video today, give it a thumbs up down below. Don't forget, if you're new here, thank you very much for joining us, and hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and that way you won't miss out on any future posts. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, and that way you can show off all the beautiful things that you make from the channel. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time. And that's it from me today. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.